Okie doke. So now we're back in a fifth, I guess, and last video of chapter 2 about why leisure is vital. And we're going through 12 benefits, and we're going to go through last two, 11th and the 12th, beginning with the 11th benefit, the risk, which is an interesting thing, right? I mean, if you think about when you hear risk, you don't think it's a beneficial thing per se. But the research suggests that there is a beneficial aspect too, actually. What we mean by risk is this: an experience of excitement and danger with a certain potential of loss, injury, illness, and even death. So there's negativity. But there are benefits of risk-taking, especially through leisure. For example, sensation and sensation seeking, and a really feeling of exhilaration or excitement, basically, right? Think about, for example, skydiving. I don't do those things, but I assume that there's a lot of sensation and excitement going on. And feeling competent. When you manage those risks, when you control those fearful situations, afterwards you can feel you're competent. You feel that you're skillful in a way. And lastly, escape from the ordinary routine. Think about it, like for example, again, skydiving. How many times in your daily life you get up in the thousands of miles in the sky and fall? No, we don't. Most of us don't. So it breaks basically the ordinary, almost boring routine, the same thing and again. You can get escape from that. Once again, I don't take risk. I do not like risk, but sometimes people make me. I'm going to share my personal experience a little bit. So 3 years ago, I think, my wife's friend invited us, me and my wife, to go to camping at the Waterton National Park. Have you ever been to Waterton? It's a southern part of Alberta. It's very beautiful, small area. Not a lot of people like Banff National Park or Jasper. So I recommend in general. We had a good camping, good cookout. We slept in a tent. And next day, they said, "Oh, we're gonna go for a hike. It's gonna be, easy hike, morning to afternoon at what is called a Crypt Lake hike route trail. We're gonna take a ferry, go to that island area because otherwise we can't get to there, and you have to come back by 2 or 3 and then take a ferry back." Right? And there's supposed to be pretty beautiful area at the end, and they're like, "It's easy, we're going with their running shoes, not even trekking shoes." And we were like, okay. Then we went through, and it wasn't too hard, and we are done 99% of the hike, like literally 10-15 minutes to the final area. And then you see this on the left side, like this much space. The one side is wall. It's a cliff. It's on a cliff. The other side is nothing. Okay, and it's not like it's paved or something. It's uneven, and people just go. Right? It's crazy. And you can see actually a little ladder, metal thingy here, and you have to climb up this ladder, which is rusted very much, and you have to climb into this tunnel to get to the final destination, which is very close. So I get there, friends go, and I turn to my wife and says, my wife's name, "I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do this. I don't like this risk. I know this is a slight chance, but what if it falls? Like, what if a rock comes from the top and we fall? I don't like that risk." And then we stopped there. We had a lunch there, and we went back. We were literally 10 minutes away from the final destination, which is arguably really beautiful. Anyway, so some people like risk, some people don't, and I don't. But again, some people like it. Like this guy in the picture on the right side. I don't know who that is. It's a random picture from Google, but he is enjoying this risk taking. And if he falls, he's a goodbye. There you go. So this makes some of the researchers wonder, like, why would people like this kind of thing, risky stuff? Maybe this is not that extreme example, but what about like skydiving? What about base jumping? What about other thing like speeding, racing in a car? Like, why would people do that? There are many different reasons, and the different studies shows that. For example, Barlow and their colleagues, they compare different types of leisure activity risk-taking. For example, skydiving and mountaineering. Okay, so a lot of skydivers on average chose that activity and risk-taking because they wanted to seek that sensation, exhilaration. But a lot of mountaineers, on the other hand, wanted to feel emotion, wanted to control and regulate their emotion. Controlling your fear, for example, and the stress. And feeling agency, being in charge, choosing a route, doing this, doing that type of thing. So across the activities, there are different risk-taking reasons. Another study by Ewart, they show that even within the same activity, here it's climbing, rock climbing, right? There are different types of reasons for risk-taking. For example, for inexperienced novice climbers, competition with maybe other people, or accomplishment. When you get to the top, you feel accomplished, right? But for a more experienced climber, it's about creativity. Which way to take, what to use, what's the style, and it's really self-expression. Maybe these are the people who are serious about this leisure activity. You express yourself through that activity. Now, finally, we also have to think about what people do outside of those risky leisure, because that's the reason sometimes. Mitchell, he studied climbers as well, and he realized a lot of climbers are actually office workers, engineers and such, and their work doesn't have a lot of creativity, a lot of manual, like very redundant, same computer work, and very less self-expression in them. So these climbers wanted to feel those things in their climbing experiences. So these studies shows that basically the reason why people try to take a risk in leisure depends on activity, how experienced and how serious about certain activity, even inside of one activity. And then finally, between that activity and other life domains, such as work, that relationship too. It's a very complex phenomenon. And then finally, we hear the 12th and last benefit of leisure is spirituality. And that's certainly related to ritual, right? And this is the definition of spirituality by a guy called Paul Heinzman from University of Ottawa. He's the researcher of leisure and spirituality. And he defined it as feelings, thoughts, experiences, and behaviors that arise from a search for the sacred. The sacred doesn't have to be like a god and higher existence. It can be many other things such as nature, for example. And according to him, spirituality involves different kinds of strong, intense emotions, such as happiness, peacefulness, elation, excitement, love, and awe, like we talked about in terms of my Kumanokodo pilgrimage study. Spirituality also involves different types of cognition, thinking pattern, such as making sense of the world, understanding the world, right? Connecting to yourself, nature, and other people. Sometimes it's about community. Think about, for example, church. It's really strongly about community. It also facilitated what is called self-transformation and transcendence. Self-transformation means that you change how you think about yourself. Maybe some type of spiritual activity, maybe religious church-going activity will change you, how you think about yourself. Maybe that you are more of a leader type of person, although you didn't think that you're a leader before. On the contrary, transcendence is not changing about how you think you are, but you're going beyond yourself, your individual self. You connect, you relate to something bigger than yourself, such as sometimes it's the higher existence and maybe God and stuff like that. Sometimes it's nature that survives thousands of years of time. Or maybe it's the community as a collective human beings that, again, keep going, that live longer than yourself. And here are some examples of spiritual leisure activity. Obviously, maybe church going and other religious activities are definitely one type. But at the same time, things like whale watching, nature adventure activity tended to be very spiritual as well. Have you watched whale? I haven't. I really want to. Then you go to the cruise and if you're lucky, you see a big jump of the whale in front of you. The sheer bigness, right? And will make you feel that how vulnerable nature is sometimes because whale numbers are going down. But at the same time, how magnificent the nature is. You can think about those, how big the nature is and how, on the contrary, how small you are as a person. But in a good way, it makes you humble. And those are the spiritual activity as well. And it's definitely part of it's beneficial. We even think that spirituality is one aspect of happiness and their well-being these days. So it was a long chapter, a lot of information, 12 benefits to cover. So what are the takeaway? I want you to make sure that you can describe different benefits of leisure. We covered 12. Freedom, intrinsic motivation, not a meaning. Intrinsic motivation, happiness, pleasure, play, humor, relaxation, solitude and silence, ritual, commitment, risk, and spirituality, right? For each you want to understand, but at the same time, you should be able to differentiate and relate them. Some of them are related to each other, right? But they're different, like spirituality and ritual, for example. And can you identify specific benefits of leisure if I give you an example, scenario? Or can you give me a scenario if I mention specific benefit, right? Vice versa. And justify your choice, justify. Don't just name it, but explain why. And finally, can you use these theories and study evidence that we learn to convince other people of the leisure's value? Because I want you to be able to do that after this course. I think leisure is important, research back it up, but some people in our society don't agree with us, don't agree with that. And we need a lot more of ambassadors, if you will, of leisure, you guys. This concludes chapter 2, lectures. Bye now.